Welcome to part 2 of Autism Moms Roundtable on the BioNexus Health Podcast with Dr. Jodi A. Dashaw,
who holds a PhD in integrative medicine, is board certified in integrative pediatrics, an internationally recognized pioneering clinician, and author. And now here's your host of BioNexus Health Podcast, Dr. Jodi A. Dashaw.
Who's next with the question? Sandila, yes.
I actually want to ask that apart from gluten, GFCF, if a child has high candida and high clostridia and with high oxalates too, so what are the things we can give in routine? Because at that time you have to be very specific, because most of the fruits and vegetables, some have high oxalates, some have high carbs in that. So we need to give in moderation, or we need to give, we can't give them daily as such. So I actually wanted to ask that what are the safest vegetables or fruits, you can say, that we can give to those kids which have too many digestive issues, like those we have high oxalates, high clostridia, and high candida.
Okay.
So
okay. Yes, go ahead, please. If you have anything else, go ahead. I understand.
Yes. So I just wanted to know the safest kind of vegetables and fruits, because most of the fruits and vegetables which I selected for my daughter, either they are high oxalates or high carbs. So I need to then cut them from my diet, or either give in very small amount, or either once or twice in a week, like this. So
Okay.
she is already quite deficient in so many important nutrients.
Yes.
So I wanted to know that what are the safest kind of fruits and vegetables that we are given to those kids which have too many digestive issues, like my daughter.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. High candida. Let's tackle that first. So high candida, that's an opportunistic infection. And what I have found, my experience has been that you don't need to restrict carbs. Okay. Now, especially if you are on the BioNexus protocol, right? So fruits, all kinds of fruits, all kinds of vegetables. I'm just tackling high candida now. Okay. All fruits and vegetables are fine. If you are doing gluten-free carbs, that is also fine, as long as you have at least 2 menus. Don't give the same thing every day. All right. So at least 2 menus is fine, and there is no other restrictions other than obviously sugar. And I'm not talking about sugar from fruits and vegetables. Like, for example, carrots have sugar, right? Oranges have carbs and sugar. That's not what I'm speaking. Anything natural eaten in moderation. Like if you're eating 5 oranges 3 times a day, that's obviously not healthy. So as long as you're eating a rainbow every day, in many of my lectures, I speak about this, like eat a rainbow. Again, the whole family, for crying out loud. That would be great if the whole family would eat healthy. There is no restrictions. Now, fruits and vegetables are okay. Honey is okay. Carbs are okay on if you find high candida, because the BioNexus protocol handles any overgrowth. You don't have to worry about that, right? So it makes life very much easier. Now, obviously, if there are specific allergies, okay, then you have to avoid that. Like some people have allergies to raspberries, right? Because raspberries are in the same family as pollen. So if you get like spring allergies, then you'll find that you have allergies to raspberries. So whatever individual allergies there are. Then next is peel the fruits and vegetables as much as possible. Remove the peel. That helps a lot with digestion. Okay. obviously not, you can't peel strawberries, so you don't have to peel the strawberries, but I'll give you my example, right? Brian used to break out in hives and rashes on his arms, on his chest, with a lot of things. So what we did was, when we started peeling, that reduced, but did not go away. And then I decided to blanch. So blanching means that, flash cooking everything. So all the fruits, okay, even though they would become like a little bit, you don't have to make them mushy. They still remain soft. Sorry, my throat is a bit off today. Okay. So what I would do is I would take apples and pears and strawberries and berries I'll talk about a bit later, but hard fruits, and I would just boil them, put them in the hot water, boil the water, and put them in the hot water for like 5 seconds and pull them out. Okay, so they are slightly cooked, but they are still crunchy. So that seemed to help a lot, right? So first peel them, then blanch them. So it's B for boy, LANCHING, blanching. You can look it up on YouTube how it's done, but blanching helps. Now, in the beginning with berries, what I had to do was I actually had to make compotes with berries. So, it's a COMPOTE, compote. That's the only way we were able to feed berries, but because they have so many health benefits, I used to do that, right? So little by little, so as his histamine load went down, as his mast cell issues calmed down, the mold was removed from the body. Mold meaning, mold toxins, mycotoxins were eliminated. We started being able to add in a whole lot of things, so that is one way. Now, you mentioned about oxalates, phenols, and one other thing you mentioned, right? High oxalates. What else did you say?
Other is high Clostridia and high histamine too.
Histamine, right? So, okay. Clostridia is an infection. So BioNexus protocol, the herbals will be taking care of that. So, correct. So oxalates and histamine. High histamine can be dealt with if you are doing the enzymes, if you are doing the protocol that is addressing the mast cells and histamine, and if you rotate the foods that are high in histamine. For example, anything orange is high in histamine, or just don't give. If it is that much of an issue, then you need to avoid. you need to avoid altogether. Now, when it comes to oxalates, you rarely have to go no oxalate. Unless your organic acids test shows like, 700-800 oxalates, all right? If it is showing maybe 50 to 100 elevated, all you need to do is to rotate the high oxalate foods. So don't give it every day, give it maybe 3 days a week or every other day, okay? Now, once again, when there is high oxalates, you need to be sure that you have the sponges that mop up the extra oxalates, right? Now, that is incorporated into the BioNexus protocol. If your child shows up high on oxalates on any testing. So complete avoidance is not, you don't have to do that. You just have to, like I said, maybe every other day. For myself, because our food allergies were so severe, and because also he was so thin and not growing, we had 4 menus. Like I had 4 menus. And so whatever he ate on Monday, he did not eat again till Thursday or maybe Friday. So that's, everything, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. And, because he was so thin, and so many mitochondrial issues, so many like worms coming out and parasites. I had to feed him quite often. We had that program in school as well. School nurse was aware that he needs. So I used to send 2 snacks. So almost every 2 hours, eat breakfast, then after 2 hours, have a morning snack. And then I remember lunch used to be around 11:30, 12 at school. So eat lunch then. Then after lunch, again, 1:30 to eat another snack. And then he would come home by 3-ish, and then I would give him another snack. So, and then he would have dinner, and then that's it. After dinner, no more, because, body needs time to digest. So, and somehow, more than physical, his neurological development happened first. So remember that, all of you parents, that, children who are developing neurologically, language, cognition, communication, awareness, listening skills, following directions. So any brain activity or any other neurological improvement, like for example, my son had his left leg paralyzed. So that was neurological. It started improving. I have some children who have like facial muscle imbalances. They're not able to chew properly because muscles are weak. Some have swallowing problems, right? So if these are getting better, remember that these require a whole lot more calories. Brain work needs a whole lot more calories than physical work. You may have also noticed, if you, like me, in my old age, I started doing, PhD, and then I was doing advanced immunology at Harvard. And my goodness, I was eating every hour because, it's a lot of calorie spending, a lot of calories, right? So keep that in mind and manage your child's diet accordingly. So I hope that answered your question. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. Who wants to go next?
Ma'am, what's the difference between the intolerance, gluten intolerance and gluten allergy? Both are the same?
No.
Or intolerance is more related with the gut issue, and when the gut is healed, if the child has intolerance to gluten, and if the gut is healed, then can we introduce the gluten back again? My son is on gluten from the last 2 years, but when I started the diet till now, I have not seen any diet related improvement. I have noticed the cases in which parents, when started GFCF diet, then many behaviors are controlled. In my son case, I have noticed almost no change with only diet. So it is beneficial to continue with the GFCF?
Yes. All kinds of mast cell activities, all kinds of autoimmunity is reaction to proteins. Okay. Like, for example, bacteria comes in, viruses come in, the immune system will get activated reacting to the proteins. Like, for example, right, COVID-19 spike protein, right? So gluten and casein are very toxic proteins for children that have underlying inflammation already existing in the gut, right? Now, when there is infections, then you know that as soon as you get an infection, your immune system, depending on how good it is, but immune system will start to develop antibodies so it can kill off the infections, correct? Okay, I'm going to keep it very basic, of course. Some of you are physicians, but forgive me, but most are not. So I'll keep it very basic. Right. So these antibodies go after the viruses and bacteria and try to kill them off, eliminate them. But with children with diminished immunity, right, with compromised immune system, children on the spectrum, we know, and there are many research studies that have been done, right, that they have compromised immune systems. Then you bring into play PANS and PANDAS type issues. PANS has many triggers. Diet is one of those triggers. So once there is autoimmunity, the PANS-PANDAS autoimmunity is friendly fire from your adaptive immune system, right? Sorry, I'll take one step back. Your immune system has two branches. One is your inborn or innate that you're born with, and the other one is the acquired, which comes, which you start acquiring the resistance. So it means that you acquire your immunity and you're building up your immune system. So with Lyme and co-infections, you have your adaptive immune system that becomes suppressed. With autism, we know that adaptive immune system, studies, like I said, have been done that show that it is suppressed, it is compromised. Then when there is mold exposure, that is when your innate immune system becomes compromised. So, and it can also become autoimmune, but the friendly fire in the innate immune system is not called autoimmunity, because autoimmunity per se involves antibodies. So that is part of your acquired immune system. So that's autoimmunity with PANS-PANDAS. But with mold exposure, there is also friendly fire, but that is called as auto-inflammatory. So there is, automatic inflammation being developed, and there are many triggers for this. Okay, there is also a secondary inflammation pathway, the lectin pathway. Now, what is the most famous lectin? Gluten. So what is happening is, remember, inflammation can be a silent killer. Not really killing, but silently damaging the organs behind. There are many cases of, extreme cases would be like, oh, he was living a very healthy lifestyle, no symptoms, nothing. Now he has cancer. How did that happen? Well, all cancer is what? Basically, it's inflammation. Almost a decade of inflammation. I remember reading somewhere, it takes almost a whole decade of inflammation in the body, could often be silent, to end up with cancer. So any kind of triggers like gluten and casein, it is best to avoid. Casein can be reintroduced pretty soon. Again, I already explained that, not so much cow. Now, gluten is something that seems to be, a huge problem for most families, because it is difficult, because everybody else in the family, nobody else wants to eat gluten-free, right? So you have to cook separately. That, right? It's
our son gluten-free diet from the last 2 years, but still he has a very intense craving for gluten. He's always in the search of, he finish his food, he's okay with his diet, but then after finishing his bread or gluten-free bread and meal, he's in the search of that gluten-containing bread.
Right, yeah. So this is called as gluteomorphine or casomorphine reaction, which is an allergic. It is an addiction in the brain. So here, this is a very good point you bring up, okay? Now, there are, opioid-like receptors in the brain, right? So when gluten and casein is not good for you, in those children, this kind of craving develops. Of course, if there is infections, then your body craves to feed the infections. There are studies that show that parasites and other bacteria can reprogram your urges and cravings. So that is what's happening. And what happens in many children, there are lab tests available here which evaluate what kind of an addictive opioid reaction. So to children like that, gluten and dairy, whatever the case may be, is like opium. It's like heroin. It's like cocaine. So they become addicted to that, especially if it is around. If it is, so that shows you that it's even more important to keep him away, that he needs to completely detoxify from all gluten and casein. Okay, so
ma'am, what about the regulars? If
What's
the
that?
child is also egg allergy, my child is also allergic to both egg yolk and egg white.
Oh, really? Okay.
And
So,
he's on the egg-free diet. He's not craving for eggs, but it is very difficult to stop him from gluten.
well, yes, eggs don't have an opioid reaction.
Yes, he's not craving for egg.
Yes, I know that's because eggs don't have an opioid reaction. It's just, casomorphine and gluteomorphine. Okay, just those two. And casomorphine seems to be, there seems to be a way out of that because, you can use specific cheese. You can make yogurt in a very specific way, which I will teach you when the time is right. But gluten is simply, you cannot introduce that. I mean, if you want to, your mom, that's up to you, but you will be responsible for the consequences. So that is one advice that I give all parents.
When if a child accidentally eat, it's not accidentally, he's in the search of gluten, and somewhere he will find, he'd start from his little sister. Then does enzyme, that enzyme helps if I give him my enzyme on a regular basis then?
If you're giving enzymes on a regular basis, that partially helps, okay? But this does not mean that you make it a routine that he has access to gluten. So,
Okay.
right, so let me admit Asma. Asma has come in, all right. Okay, so yes, I mean, accidents happen, that's right. And entire families cannot convert to gluten-free.
In our case, it's not accident, but he's growing. He's now 6-year-old. He has more power, and he's always in the search of this thing. He can climb up the cupboards. He will open the cupboards and he take out the buns. He take out the bread, biscuit. Even if he's full, his tummy is almost full. Then even then he's in the search of the gluten. Only gluten containing.
Exactly. So that is clearly an addiction. So I don't know, well, lock and key. If you're not able to eliminate gluten from your kitchen, then lock and key. Right? It will slow down the healing process. It will slow down the anywhere in the body that there is inflammation, brain, gut, whatever, right? It is. So gluten is something that you need to stay away from for a while. So I think that answers the question. If you cannot, then like you said, do the enzymes and stay on the protocol. Yes, I mean, protocol is already anti-inflammatory, but just understand that it's going to take longer. I usually discourage families from having so-called, cheat days. Okay, I'm giving him something once a week, but then he knows that he can get it once a week. So that, for a little child's brain, that will not make logical sense. So if you just say no, like, for example, I had not introduced chocolate to Brian, like ever. The first time he had, sugar or chocolate was when he was, I don't know, 6, 7 years old. And that was it, because I just didn't want to, right? And any kind of McDonald's, any kind of, it was at a much, much older age when we had to, because there was nothing else available. In fact, it was weird, his pre-K, right? His nursery school teacher, she was young, this young chickie, she comes up to me and says, "Oh my God, Dr. Dashore." I'm like, "What?" She goes like, "Brian did not know what a Happy Meal is." I'm like, "Yeah, and so she goes like, "You've never taken him to McDonald's?" I'm like, "No, and I don't plan on it. Do you have a problem with that?" So she just gave me this weird look. I'm like, really, sit down. Let me explain to you how many ingredients, because just the French fries, I can't tell you how many parents think that French fries at McDonald's, and I'm saying McDonald's, but it's obviously all fast food chains. They actually have 14 different chemicals, if I'm not mistaken. It's not just potatoes and oil and salt. So if you want to feed that to your child and your family, of course, it's your decision. But if you have a special needs child or any other special needs family member, I would highly recommend home cooked meals. Okay, who's next?
That concludes Part 2 Autism Moms Roundtable on the BioNexus Health Podcast. Join us next week for Part 3. Thank you for joining Master Herbalist Dr. Jodi A. Dashaw, Director of the BioNexus Health Clinic and BioNexus Herbals, on the BioNexus Health Podcast. You can subscribe for free on most podcast apps. By subscribing, you encourage the algorithms to spread our messages of hope and healing. You may also leave a review on your preferred podcast app or share on your social networks to promote the podcast, where we explore and share information and stories about recovering and healing from chronic and environmental illnesses such as mold biotoxin illness, Lyme disease, autism spectrum disorder, fatigue, Crohn's and colitis, mast cell activation syndrome, PANS, and more. For more information, visit bionexushealth.com.
Information within this video, audio, or text, collectively known as the podcast, has not been reviewed by the FDA. Nothing within the podcast is intended as or should be construed as medical advice. Information is for general informational and educational purposes only. Consumers of the podcast should consult with their healthcare practitioners for medical recommendations. Seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider. Do not disregard the advice of a healthcare provider based on any information from the podcast. The information within the podcast may contain information concerning dietary supplements or over-the-counter products that are not drugs. Our dietary supplement products are not intended for use as a means to cure, treat, prevent, diagnose, or mitigate any disease or other medical or abnormal condition.